What's your dating app horror story? I am a 25-year-old guy. Last year I started using the app Tinder as I was curious to see if it would work for me. I used the app daily and I got a few matches. I even had a few conversations, but nothing was that serious until I matched with a girl named Avery who was 23 and just 4 miles away. She looked nice, and after we matched I immediately sent her a message. She got back to me an hour later. After that, we talked about general stuff, getting to know each other, and she seemed very nice. Only 2 days into chatting she suggested that we hang out. I agreed to hang out with her. Avery told me that she worked until the night every day and that we should meet at a local park at 10 p.m. I agreed to it, and the next night I went to the park to meet her. It was a pretty big park. It had picnic tables spread out all over and a little pond surrounded by some woods. When I got to the park I wasn't quite sure where to go, so I pulled my car to the side of the road and texted her on Tinder that I was there. She responded saying she was really sorry but she was running a little late and she would be there in 5 minutes. I sat in my car and I waited and looked around. The park was empty at this hour. This wasn't my ideal idea of a first date, but I really wanted to get to know the girl because she had seemed nice and interested in me. Finally, a couple of minutes later I got a message from her. The message said, "I'm here, meet me by the pond." I looked around but I didn't see any cars or people. There was a chance she parked around a corner of the street that I couldn't see, so I slowly got out of my car and looked around. It was too dark to see a lot, just a few dim lights spread around the park. I got out of my car and started walking into the park. I took out my phone and told her I was walking to the pond. It was a pretty large area near the pond, so I decided to walk all over it. When I reached the edge I didn't see anybody, but I heard a car driving down the road, so I looked to see if it was Avery. The car pulled up next to mine and then parked in front of it. It was a black old beat-up car, but I couldn't see who was driving because it was too far away. I started to walk over to the car because I wasn't seeing anybody near the pond at all, and I was starting to get a bad feeling about this whole situation. As I started to walk I heard leaves rustling behind me, followed by the feeling of somebody pushing me from behind. I fell to the ground and without seeing who pushed me I was kicked in the back. Then somebody got on top of my back and it was clearly not a girl but a man. I tried to fight back but I was overpowered. It was a large man who was very strong and I saw he was wearing a hood. He grabbed my legs and tried to grab my arms, but I fought back as much as I could. He started dragging me by my legs to the direction of my car. I kicked around as much as possible and was able to break free for just a second, which was all I needed. I immediately got up and sprinted into the woods into the other side of the park, which led to some old roads. After I was sure I wasn't being followed I called my friend to come pick me up. He came right away when he heard what happened and then drove me to my car. Of course the account blocked me and I felt dumb to be catfished, but at least I was able to escape alive. I got bored on Tinder and wanted a causal relationship. My first 20 swipes were not matched, but then I matched a girl named Michelle who was a 9/10. She was a 23-year-old blonde, but slightly too good looking. I asked for her number and texted her to ask if she wanted to do anything tonight. She was very willing, but she wanted to meet in public before taking me back to her place. She said she wanted to hang out by a small park near her place at 10 p.m., which seemed odd, but I was down. I left at 9:45 and sent her a confirmation text. It was only a 10-minute drive to the small residential park. I walked over to the swings. I was early, so I texted her at 10:02 to tell her I was there, but this was when she stopped responding. I started to believe she flaked. The playground was surrounded by a forest, and considering it was a weeknight nobody was out and about at this time. The only reason I could see in the dark was due to a light bulb mounted to a small bathroom shack opposite the swings. I was sitting on the swings pushing back and forth in boredom, and then I froze. The sound of the squeaky swing stopped, allowing me to hear something echo out from the little bathroom shack. It sounded intentional, meaning someone might be in there. Now this wouldn't be strange considering it's a public park, only I would have thought they'd have locked the bathrooms at this hour. Who else would be at this park on a 10:15 weeknight? Then I felt a vibration in my pocket. So excited I whipped out my phone and saw a new text from Michelle. The text said, "Hey, I just got here. Come into the bathroom, I have a surprise for you." My heart dropped as I read this. I felt butterflies in my stomach. Not as an innocent nervousness, more like a disturbed and freaked out feeling. My thumbs were hovering over the phone as I was conjuring up something to type in response. Then she sent another text saying, "Get off the swing and come here." As I read the text, I looked up to the tiny bathroom building and opened my mouth almost ready to scream when I saw half of a person's face peering out of the entrance from one of the bathrooms, leering over to me on the swing. Only maybe for half of a second I saw a good portion of their face as they slowly moved out of sight. To be honest, in the heat of the moment I couldn't tell if it was a male or female, but I knew something bad was going on and I was disturbed by this situation. I got off the swing quietly and tiptoed away from the playground. When I was far enough away, I ran back to my car as fast as I could. That run back to the car was one of the most horrific experiences of my life, as I had the constant fear of somebody chasing me in the back of my mind. As soon as I got back in my car I paused for a breather, but up until that point nothing compared to the gut-wrenching fear that I felt when I took one look at the park. I saw a grown man emerge from the tree running full speed towards my car. I turned the key in ignition and practically threw the car in drive before it was even fully started. When I was halfway down the road and looked back, there was nobody in the streets. When I pulled into my driveway, I sat there for 10 minutes thinking and reflecting. I truly appreciated my life after that experience and deleted Tinder from my phone. I've been using the app Hinge to meet new people in the town I just recently moved into. I matched this girl Kate. She was about 7 years older than me. She's 30 and I'm 23. It was my idea to meet her at some small restaurant in town. I waited in my car in the parking lot for her to pull up. For some reason she had trouble finding the place, so I shared my location with her. After doing so, she shortly after pulled up in some lemon of a car, an old beater Honda. I felt a sense of disappointment when I saw it was her stepping out of it. I went out to hug her hello and she said she wasn't much of a hugger, so I shamefully put my arms back down. Bad start, I was thinking in my head. When we sat down at a table inside, I was able to see that she looked different from her pictures, worse. She was the girl in the pictures, sure, but it seemed as though she had her pictures doctored up to make her look better. She also looked to be older than 30. I was already not feeling this date, but I couldn't just end it now. I'd have to sit through the dinner with her. When the waitress came to start us off with drinks, Kate was really awkward, like the way her voice suddenly raised in volume and intensity as she spoke to the waitress. She stuttered as she rudely said she just wanted water. She turned down my offer for wine. So I went through the whole dinner with her, and in my head I was thinking about how excited I was to just get out of there. The bill came and I was waiting to see if she'd make any offer to chip in for it, as I had no plans of seeing her again, but she did not. I paid the bill and we grabbed our coats and left. I told her I had a really nice time and whatever, but it seemed that she didn't want to go home. I had to force myself to break off as I really wanted to go home. I said bye and got in my car. She didn't say bye back, she instead just walked to her car. I drove home to my apartment, which is the lower half of someone's house. I didn't even finish hanging up my coat before the doorbell rang. I checked through the window who it could be, and it was Kate. I hadn't stopped sharing my location with her. What could she want? I hadn't forgotten anything at the restaurant, and even if I had, she could have just texted me. It was then that I realized this woman might actually be nuts. I walked away from the door and hid in the kitchen with the lights off. I got a text from Kate saying, "I know you're home." I replied, "What do you want? Why are you here?" She texted back, "Answer." I didn't answer that time. I stayed in the kitchen and waited there for a while until she texted again saying, "I see you at the table, let me in now." She knew I was sitting there. She could see me, and in a panic, I looked at all the windows until I saw the one. It was one of the backyard windows where I hadn't lowered the shade all the way down, and through that little opening at the bottom I saw her eyes creeping in. Freaking out, I went to my room and stayed in there with the lights off. I called 911 to report trespassing. I had the call on speakerphone so I could read the insane texts that Kate was sending me. One of her texts read, "Nobody wants me, I am sick of it." Another said, "You're just like the others." Then I heard the sound of glass being broken outside my room. I ran to the door and locked it and told the operator she was breaking and entering. The woman on the line said to wait in my room and grab something to use as a weapon. She said the cops would be there shortly. Kate tried the doorknob to my room, and when it wouldn't open she started pounding angrily, yelling for me to open up. I told the 911 operator to send the cops in through the back, as that was how she broke in. Luckily this town seems to have a fast 911 response time, as cops were there in minutes. 3 cop cars actually. I heard the cop cars talking with her, telling her to calm down. That was when I opened the door to see 4 cops around her, with her being already in cuffs. She was taken away and charged with breaking and entering along with some other charges. I had the option to take her to civil court for damages to my property, but the time and lawyer fees would be more than to fix the window, so that's what I did. I did get a restraining order against Kate though. While I later learned her real name was Pamela Castillo. I've tried all the major dating apps and I never really have much luck on them. My friend told me he was having luck on this app. Hot or not, so I gave it a try, and right off the bat I was getting a lot more likes, albeit from girls I didn't really find attractive at all. Still, on my first batch of free swipes I matched this one cute blonde girl named Julia. I'll spare the details of our conversation, but it went excitingly well. It was one of those rare matches where the girl was attractive and very receptive to my messages, seeming like she was actually enjoying talking to me. We quickly moved to Snapchat. I asked her for her number, but she said let's talk on Snapchat instead. I was fine with that. I added her on Snap and she added me back. Her Snap score was low, like under 1000, so right away I was upset and suspicious that this may have been too good to be true like I thought. She messaged me and I messaged back being blunt, asking her to snap a selfie of herself just for my safety. I told her there's a lot of catfish profiles going around, so I can't be too careful. She opened the message right away but didn't reply for a minute. I thought for sure the account was going to block me any second, but instead to my surprise I got a notification that I got a snap from Julia. I opened the snap and it was the same blonde-haired girl from the pictures. Still, I wasn't convinced, so I asked her to give me a thumbs up or a peace sign. She opened the chat. I was waiting to see if she blocked me this time. She didn't respond for a couple minutes until finally she sent another snap. I opened it and it was half her face smiling, holding up a peace sign. That was enough for me. I snapped her back, then we messaged for a little while. We eventually made plans to hang out. She invited me over to her house, which was across town not too far away. She said that she was home alone and it wouldn't be a problem. She gave me an exact address. I noticed she had her Snap Map on, so I did a little check to make sure her address matched her Snapchat location. It seemed to check out. I told her it'd be over soon. I changed into decent clothes, sprayed on some cologne, combed my hair and got in my car to head over. I remember thinking I may have overdid it with the cologne. She snapped me while I was driving asking if I was on the way, and I told her yes. She read it immediately but didn't respond. I got to the house. It had the number 22 written clear as day next to the door. I messaged her that I was there. She didn't open the snap though, so I decided to just go and ring the bell. There were no cars in the driveway and the grass seemed like it hadn't been cut in a few weeks. I rang the bell but she didn't answer, so I started knocking really loud. When she still didn't answer, I went back to Snap and tried calling her using that, and it just kept ringing without her answering. Was I just pranked? I suddenly heard a woman's voice yelling something at me across the street. I imagined it to be Julia at first, so I realized it was an older woman yelling, "Excuse me, what are you doing?" I began walking back to the street saying I was meeting someone. She said back to me in a lower volume, now that we were closer, that I had the wrong house, nobody lives there. I asked the address from her, which matched Julia's address. I thanked her and got in my car. I went to try to message Julia one more time but she blocked me. I felt like I was played for a fool. They unmatched me on Hot or Not too. Luckily I took screenshots of the profile before that, as I sent some to one of my friends before driving to the house. When I got home I sent screenshots to my friend group chat with 8 others asking if anyone knew her. One guy named Darren said something that shocked me. "That's Lisa, a girl who overdosed on heroin 2 years back." When he said that, another friend in my group chat confirmed he was right. I got goosebumps because the snaps I got was from a girl who matched that Lisa girl completely. I told my friends, who thought I was crazy or the situation was crazy. Without a doubt certain the girl in those snaps was Lisa. How this happened I have no idea. Why was I lead to that house? I can't even try to imagine. It was my first date with a girl from an online dating website. I offered to have her over and cook for her. I'd been out of the dating scene for a long time, since I recently broke up with my girlfriend at the time. The woman's name was Amelia. She was 26. I was 32 at the time. I didn't think having her over for dinner before meeting her was weird. If anything, it would be more relaxed or comfortable than meeting at some bar or restaurant. I was cooking some penne alla vodka with garlic bread and wine, my favorite combo. Amelia arrived around 6:30. I welcomed her in and asked her to sit at one end of the kitchen table. I was finishing up the food as I tried to get to know her. She wasn't as talkative as I was expecting based on her appearance. I had to lead most of the conversation. I was slightly nervous given that it was my first date in years, and it didn't help that she wasn't exactly the easiest to talk to. I served her a plate of food and some wine, then she asked something odd. She wanted me to get a proper candle so we could have a proper cheers. I had nothing else to say but to go along with it. I left the kitchen to the pantry closet in the hallway to get one of the candles and a lighter. When I came back to the kitchen, I spotted Amelia sitting back down like very quick like. It looked kinda sketchy. "Everything okay?" I asked, to which she replied she just had to rinse her hands, which was odd as I didn't hear the sink run, but I moved past it and lit the candle. Then we did a little cheers. I was about to take a sip of my wine and I noticed something floating in the glass. Something that wasn't in it before. It looked like a powdery substance being dissolved into the wine. I watched as she looked at me not taking a sip of wine. I pretended to take a sip, nervously continued conversation that was assuming the worst, that she tried to drug me, but I couldn't just accuse her of that. What if I was wrong? I'd look crazy. We ate our food and I cleaned up the table afterwards. She excused herself to the bathroom, which I pointed her to. She was gone for a while, but when she came back she said she had to get going because her dog was sick. I had no problem with her leaving. I walked her out and hugged her goodbye. I went back to the glass of wine and smelt it, but it didn't smell like anything except wine. I dumped it and made sure nothing was stolen from the kitchen to the hallway to the bathroom. After cleaning, I watched TV whilst telling my friends I think she tried to drug me. Then I went to sleep. Actually, I didn't sleep. I have acute insomnia which comes on and off, and this was one night which I just couldn't get shut eye. I rolled from one side of the bed to the other for hours, and it must have been 2:30 or something when I heard a cup fall from my kitchen. That terrified me because, well, cups are pretty stationary objects. I didn't see why or how one could have fallen from the counter. Suddenly my door opened and someone stepped inside. I didn't move. I pretended to be asleep, but with one eye half open someone stood in front of the doorway for a few seconds and left the room. I waited a minute before getting up to follow and get the kitchen phone to call the police. There was a glimmer of light in the living room from the streetlight outside. With that I was able to see her body in the corner of the room. She wasn't ducking or nothing, she was just idly staying in place. "Amelia," I said, afraid of what would happen next. She was standing by the knife holder. "Amelia, if you leave right now I won't call the cops." There was this chilling, awful silence as she put something on the counter before she walked to the back door and exited. What she put back on the counter turned out to be a knife. When she left I locked the door first thing, of course. I think when she asked to use the bathroom she unlocked the back door with plans of returning. This was after her plans to drug me failed. Of course I called the police and they took the knife for fingerprints. Based off her criminal background, police later showed to Amelia's house and arrested her. I did not press charges.
Thank you for watching. Which story did you like best? Give feedback in the comments. Subscribe to not miss new stories.